I'm Shirley.
Standing on the upper terrace of my newly opened atrium, holding a glass of champagne in one hand and my heels in the other, I gaze down at the city lights below. The air is cool, carrying the scent of rain and new steel, a blend that smells like endings and beginnings. Through the glass roof, I can see my brother Max, his tuxedo jacket unbuttoned, along with my mother Clara and my father Henry, sitting stiffly at the bar downstairs. They look so out of place in this place they once said I'd never build. A week ago, everything was different. The night of the grand opening, the atrium was a symphony of light and sound. Soft jazz filled the air, mingling with the murmur of guests and the occasional burst of champagne laughter. I was in my element, shaking hands, smiling, and feeling the warmth of cameras flashing. My business partner, Ava, glided through the crowd in a stunning green silk dress, clipboard in one hand and champagne in the other. Just as Ava leaned over to tell me, "You did it," I heard a voice that sent a chill down my spine, Max. I froze, my hand gripping the glass tightly. Turning towards the entrance, there they were. Max, oozing over confidence, my mother Clara clutching her designer purse as if she owned the place, and my father Henry, a step behind, his eyes avoiding mine. At the front desk, the hostess politely informed them there was no reservation. Max frowned and demanded a check, while Clara stepped forward, her voice dripping with superiority. We were told this was a private family event. "I'm Mrs.
Thompson," she declared.
The hostess looked at me for guidance. Setting my glass down, I walked across the floor, the chatter around me fading with each step. "Good evening," I said softly. Clara's face showed a brief moment of confusion, as if she didn't recognize me in my own space. Then, the familiar look of disapproval settled in. "Shirley," she said, as if my name was a disappointment. Max smirked. "So, this is your little project. Thought you'd be doing something more ordinary, like designing cafes." I met his eyes firmly. It used to be small, but then I stopped listening to small-minded people. His fake smile faltered. "We'll take a table." "We're family," he said quickly. I nodded at the hostess. "Take them to the public lounge downstairs. Walk-ins only." Max was taken aback, and Clara's voice grew sharp. "We're your family, Shirley." I held her gaze steadily. "You told me not to come back." I kept my promise. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Max's jaw tightened. "You think this makes you better than us?" he challenged. I stepped closer. "No, it just means I finally stopped needing you." Then I told the hostess to make sure they paid for their drinks if they stayed. Their faces showed shock, disbelief, and humiliation, all the emotions they'd once made me feel. As I walked away, the click of my heels blended with the music.
"Afa met me halfway."
"They came uninvited," she whispered. "Exactly, just like always," I replied. Now, looking down at them from the terrace, I'm reminded of the long and winding road that brought me here. My parents, Clara and Henry, came from an upper-middle-class family. They were all about appearances, social status, and following the norm. Max, my younger brother by 2 years, was their golden child. He was charming, funny, and could get away with anything. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one, always deep in thought. As a child, I had a passion for drawing places. While other kids were drawing people and stick figures, my notebooks were filled with sketches of buildings, roofs, and stairways. I loved how buildings made sense. You could design where everything belonged. But my parents never saw it as a talent. They thought it was just a passing phase. I remember the day I was 16, sitting at the breakfast table, holding a rolled-up sketch of a beautiful art gallery I designed. It had large glass walls to let in natural light and a spiral staircase in the center. I was so excited to share my dream with my family. "I think I could actually build this someday," I said, pushing the drawing towards them. My father, Henry, barely looked up from his newspaper. My mother, Clara, gave me a smile that said no, without saying a word. "Sweetie, that's nice, but you should focus on something more practical, like becoming a teacher," she suggested. Max leaned over and laughed. "Looks like a big box for art." "How boring," he mocked. That night, I found my drawing in the trash, stained with coffee. It was then that I learned to keep my dreams to myself. I applied for architecture school in secret and got in on a scholarship. When I called my mother to tell her, she sighed. Architecture is a tough field, honey. It's mostly men. You're too delicate for that. But I was determined. I worked 3 jobs, lived with second-hand furniture, and survived on black coffee and cold sandwiches. After years of hard work, I finally graduated. I thought my parents would be proud, but they had excuses. Max had a business meeting, and my father's back pain flared up. I sent them photos of my first office, a tiny studio with white walls and a single folding table. My mother texted back, "It's cute, but very small." That's when I realized I didn't need their approval anymore, but their words still haunted me. Max would often call during family dinners and put me on speaker, bragging about his real estate projects. My mother would laugh and say, "You and your brother both in the building business. How ironic." It wasn't ironic, it was painful. One Thanksgiving, things came to a head. We were sitting around the long dining table at my parents' house. The table was filled with a delicious turkey, all the trimmings, and expensive wine. Max was the center of attention, talking about his new project, a high-end nightclub in the city center. Everyone hung on to his every word, as if he was the next big thing in the business world. Max then turned to me. "You're the architecture expert, right, Shirley? What do you think of my spot? It's in a prime location, right next to a popular shopping mall." I looked up and met his smirk. "It's risky. The rent is extremely high, and foot traffic might drop after 10 p.m. You'd need a unique selling point to keep it afloat." The atmosphere at the table changed instantly. Forks stopped mid-air. My mother's voice cut through the silence, sharp and polished. "Shirley, please. Your brother has worked so hard on this. You always have to be so negative." I tried to explain. "I'm just being realistic." Max laughed. "She doesn't understand the real world, Mom. Not everyone can think outside the spreadsheets." Laughter followed, and someone even clapped him on the back. My mother held up her hand. "If you can't be supportive, just enjoy your meal." The conversation continued without me, as it always did. Max kept talking about his non-existent investors, and my father nodded along. I felt as small as I did when I was 16, watching my dreams being crushed. Finally, I pushed back my chair, the sound of it scraping against the floor echoing in the room. Everyone looked up. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I don't belong here," I said. Max smirked. "About time you realized that." My mother's voice was calm but firm. "Shirley, if you can't act like family, don't come back." I grabbed my coat and walked out. Through the glass door, I saw them still laughing and eating, as if I'd never been there. When I reached my car, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother. "Don't come back until you learn to respect your brother." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. That was the moment the last bit of hope and warmth inside me died, and a cold, determined fire took its place. The following days were a blur. I went to work, smiled when I had to, and nodded through meetings, but I felt like a ghost. Then, one morning, an email caught my eye. The subject line read, "Property listing, city center corner lot." I almost deleted it until I saw the address. It was the exact same block Max had been bragging about. It was for sale. I sat there, staring at the screen. Ava poked her head into my office, a cup of coffee in her hand. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. I turned the monitor towards her. "Remember the spot Max wanted for his nightclub?" She squinted.
Yeah.
"Well, it's available, and I can afford it," I told her. She was silent for a moment, then a slow smile spread across her face. "You're thinking about buying it, aren't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. That night, I drove to the lot. The city was half asleep, and a light rain was falling. Neon lights from a nearby diner flickered in the darkness. I parked my car and walked around the perimeter. The old brick walls were weathered, but still standing strong. Rusted beams reached towards the sky, like the bones of a forgotten giant. In my mind, I could already see the glass facades, the open atrium filled with greenery, and the light streaming in. By the end of the week, I'd sign the offer, and by the end of the month, the lot was mine. Construction started slowly at first, then picked up pace. Every morning before dawn, I'd watch the steel rising against the city skyline. The smell of metal, coffee, and wet dust became my new perfume. Ava would come by with 2 cups of coffee and a big smile. "You're not just building a place, you're exorcising your demons," she'd say. A year passed in a flurry of blueprints and concrete. There were no phone calls from my family, no texts. Just the sound of progress, a silent symphony building my new world. Finally, the atrium was complete. On the morning of its unveiling, I walked through it as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the glass ceiling. The marble floors sparkled, and my reflection in the mirrored panels looked different, stronger, more confident. Now, as I stand here on the terrace and see my family downstairs, I know they don't understand. They never will. The atrium isn't about revenge. It's about proof. It's proof that I can create something amazing, something that stands on its own. My phone buzzes again. It's a text from Ava. "They're leaving." I nod, even though she can't see me. "Good," I reply. Ava steps out onto the terrace, her coat draped over her arm. She hands me another glass of champagne. "So, what now?" she asks. I look down at the sign above the entrance. The Atrium by Shirley. "Now," I say, "I build things that don't need anyone's permission to stand." Ava clinks her glass against mine.
"To that," she says.
As we stand there, looking out at the city, I know I've come a long way. My family might not be a part of my new chapter, but I'm okay with that. I've built something for myself, something that will last far beyond their doubts and criticisms. And as I turn towards the elevator, ready to go home, I leave the past behind, knowing that the future is mine to build.